Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the combined meeting of the Vineland Board of Education. Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Here.
Mr. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. Jennings?
Present.
Mr. Medio?
In attendance.
Mr. Sabrana?
Present.
Ms. Spinelli?
Present.
Mr. Ulrich?
Present.
Ms. Acosta?
Here.
Mr. Boardley?
Here. In compliance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law, commonly referred to as the Sunshine Law, the Vineland Board of Education has caused notice and posting of this meeting to be sent to the following: announcing time and place thereof, agenda, etc. The Daily Journal, SNJ Today, the Press of Atlantic City, Nuestra Comunidad, Visto Bueno, the Clerk for the City of Vineland, and Administrative Office Public Bulletin Board. Can we have the students from Sabatier Elementary School to lead the flag salute, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stay up front for your
Please
certificates.
remain there because the board has certificates.
Thank you, boys and girls. Ms. Haley, do we have a resolution for executive session this evening?
Yes, we do. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the City of Vineland School District will convene into executive session on Wednesday, April 18th, 2018, for the following reasons as outlined in NJSA 10:4-12. Discussion is the John F. Scarpa Revocable Trust for the acquisition of the Oak and Main property, possible tenure charges against a teacher, and any matters falling within the attorney-client privilege to the extent that confidentiality is required in order for the attorney to exercise his ethical duties as a lawyer.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved. So moved. Second.
Good. Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio? Yes. Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes. Take a recess for executive session. Welcome back to the board meeting. Dr. Gruccio, do we have any special presentations this evening?
Yes, we do. I'd first like to call forward Mrs. Tammy Monahan. She is the principal of Rossi Middle School, and we are going to be honoring one of her students this evening.
Good evening, everyone. First, I would like to take a moment to thank Dr. Gruccio and the Board of Education for giving me the opportunity to speak for a moment with regards to one of our Rossi students, Riley Howerton. Riley's currently a 6th grader at Rossi School, and she's very, very much involved in many activities at the school. She's involved in our school climate team, environmental club, drama club, wellness club, and sign language club. At Rossi School, she also played a key role in promoting safe and appropriate activities to help students voice their concerns over the recent tragedy in Florida. She's currently initiating an autism awareness and fundraising campaign as well. Riley has been recognized for extensive community service efforts over the years. Tonight, Riley is being recognized for her exemplary volunteer service with the President's Volunteer Service Award, which is granted by the Prudential Spirit of Community Awards program. This award recognizes Americans of all ages who have volunteered significant amounts of their time to serve their communities and their country. I just also learned, just this moment, that Riley has also earned a Gold Service Award every year for the past 7 years, and just got another one this evening, which I'm going to be happy to hand her the certificate for. This means she's earned 1,500 community service hours to date, and her goal is 4,000 community service hours, which will give her a Lifetime Service Award when she reaches that goal. Riley has been educating others on the importance of choosing words that will not hurt or offend others when speaking. And by recognizing students like Riley, we hope to motivate others to consider how they can make a positive contribution to their community. So with that said, I would like to take a moment and bring Riley up to the stand. Riley, this is the one for this is the Volunteer Service Award with your letter, and you can hold it, or I can put it in here for you. And then this is your gold that you just earned, right here, the certificate. You can get it out. There's your gold certificate and your pin. You're welcome. Congratulations. Would you like me to hold those for you here? Okay, good. I'll bring them back for you. Oh, hold on. Sure.
Congratulations, Riley. That's wonderful. I'd like to call Mrs. Monahan again, along with Mrs. Johnson. They are two of our middle school principals, and we are going to be honoring students who were selected to the All South Jersey High School Band.
So once again, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak for yet another one of our Rossi students. I'd like to take a moment to congratulate Alec Ramondi, for being selected for the All South Jersey Band. Alex, a very talented, very nice young man, very talented trumpet player. Alex has demonstrated his dedication through his hard work and is very deserving of this achievement. We're very fortunate to have him at Rossi School as one of our Rossi Band members and a student. So, Alec Raimondi, do you want to come on down?
That's okay. Did they have? Okay. Congratulations. Good evening, everyone. I'm Hope Johnson, Veterans Memorial School, and it's always a pleasure to be here and celebrate the success of our students. This evening, I'm proud to introduce Adrian Ferrer, who is an 8th grade student at Veterans Memorial School. He's been playing trumpet since 4th grade. He has been in the Memorial School Band for the past 3 years, and back in January, excuse me, he qualified to perform with the All South Jersey Junior High School Band for the 3rd consecutive year. So the audition was held on January 27th at the Southern Regional Middle School in Manahawkin, which included 322 students from 85 different middle schools. Quite an accomplishment. The rigorous audition requirements included the following criteria: students exhibiting competency in scales, rudiments, rhythms, dynamics, and articulations applicable to individual instruments. Students demonstrating a high level of proficiency in sight reading skills, and students playing a solo etude of advanced difficulty with precision. The concert was held on Sunday, March 4th at 3 p.m. at the Fernwood Middle School in Egg Harbor Township. And last year we had the honor of honoring 3. So Adrian, come on up here. You're our solo award winner. So we're very proud of you, and I can't wait to see what you do in high school. Thank you again. Sure.
Congratulations. Next, I'd like to invite Mike Schneider up to recognize the girls. He's our girls swim coach, and he's going to recognize winners of the NJSIAA Meet of Champions.
Hope it's okay that I bring them up with me. All right, that's good. All right, good evening. First, we would like to thank the members of the Board of Education and Central Administration for inviting us here tonight. These girls work really hard. I know that it means a lot to them to get recognized by their school community. The girls that we have here tonight are 6 members of the girls swim team at Vineland High School who competed at the South Jersey Coaches Invitational, where they placed 3rd in the Division A team scoring. These same 6 girls also competed at the New Jersey State Meet of Champions. We had a 7th member of this group who had a prior commitment tonight and was not able to attend. The first swimmer that I would like to recognize is senior Jenna Carastro. Jenna, raise your hand. Jenna collected 2 top 16 finishes at the Meet of Champions, finishing 13th in the 100 butterfly and 16th in the 200 IM. This was the 2nd consecutive year that she placed at states in both of her individual events. She also competed on the 200 medley and freestyle relays, both of which also advanced to finals on day 2 of the competition. She was undefeated in league competition and won her 2nd straight Cape Atlantic League title in the 100 butterfly, earning a consensus first team all-conference selection in that event. She was fourth in both of her individual events at the South Jersey Coaches Invitational. She is a member of the VHS National Honor Society, and yesterday Jenna signed her national letter of intent to swim on scholarship next year at the University of Richmond. Her scholarship package will cover just about 100% of costs, totaling a little bit more than $64,000 per year. The second swimmer is Giovanna Lupi. Giovanna is a junior. Giovanna finished 11th in the 100 butterfly and 32nd in the 100 freestyle at the Meet of Champions. Also competed on the 200 medley and freestyle relays. She was also a first-team all-conference selection, and she won the 100 butterfly title at the South Jersey Coaches Invitational, adding a 5th place finish in the 100 freestyle in that meet. She was 3rd in the 100 butterfly and 7th in the 100 freestyle at the Cape Atlantic League Championships. And in dual meet competition, Giovanna lost just 3 races all season long. She is also a member of the VHS National Honor Society. Next is junior Jermaine Smart. Jermaine just got off the boat. She's rowing crew this spring too. Jermaine swam on the 200 medley, 200 freestyle, and 400 freestyle relays at the Meet of Champions. She also scored in both of her individual events at the Coaches Invitational, taking 8th place in the 50 free and 9th place in the 100 breast, and was also a first-team all-conference selection, taking a pair of top 10 finishes at the Cape Atlantic League Championships as well, and she is also a member of the VHS National Honor Society. Next, we have freshman Elena Marighi. Elena swam on all 3 of our relays at the Meet of Champions. She finished 8th in both the 200 free and 400 free at the Cape Atlantic League Championships, was 10th in the 200 free and 7th in the 500 free at the South Jersey Coaches Invitational, and she was an honorable mention all-conference selection. Next, we have freshman Carly Houlihan. Carly competed on the 400 freestyle relay at the Meet of Champions, as well as the South Jersey Coaches Invitational, where she finished 22nd in the 200 free and 28th in the 100 free, and was a member of the 3rd place 200 freestyle relay. And then the last member that we have here tonight is senior Gracie McLaughlin. Gracie was an alternate on our state relays. She did compete at the South Jersey Coaches Invitational and the Cape Atlantic League Championships. She was 12th in the 50 free at the Coaches Invitational and 20th in the event at the Cape Atlantic League Championships, and she swam on the 3rd place 200 freestyle relay in both meets. Gracie is also a member of the VHS National Honor Society, and in the fall will be attending Florida Atlantic University. She plans to walk onto their track team as a pole vaulter when she gets there. And then the 7th member of this group who was unable to attend that I did want to mention is senior Julia Albertson. Julia did compete in both of these meets with her teammates. Julia was actually a finalist for the South Jersey Coaches Association's Bill Maschke Scholar Athlete Award. She received a $100 scholarship from the Coaches Association as an honorable mention selection for that. And Julia is actually carrying a 4.47 GPA, which currently ranks her 4th in the senior class. She's a co-captain of the VHS academic team, where I think she is tonight. I think there's a competition going on, and she plans to attend Temple University in the fall. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, ladies. As you can see this evening, we have many students to be proud of in our district, and every board meeting we're honoring students for the wonderful achievements that they make. But I'd also like to take a moment to say congratulations to our parents as well, because it is through your support and encouragement that our students are able to achieve what they achieve. So I want to congratulate you also. And now for our last presentation, I'm going to call forward Mr. Calavini, and he is going to be talking about our redistricting plan. Watch your hand is good.
As I'm waiting for my presentation to queue up, I'm going to stand about center like this so I can talk to some of my audience out here and some of my audience up here. So I'll try not to turn my back on either group too much. Yeah, she's just about there. No. For the audience, we have just recently moved into this beautiful facility as our new main office, and we're still working out the bugs a little bit with presentations. So bear with us just for a moment, please. warming up now. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. Gruccio, fellow administrators, and ladies and gentlemen of the audience. Tonight I'm here to speak to you about our new redistricting plan for the Vineland Public Schools for next year, 2018-2019, for all kindergarten through 8th grade students. The reason that we're doing the presentation and changing all our boundaries, we opened up a brand new middle school on Lincoln Avenue, which allows us to repurpose our current Rossi Middle School as an elementary. It also gives us the latitude to be able to turn Leuchter Elementary School into a rental facility and Johnstone Elementary into Applied Math and Science Academy. So we're all kind of excited about that. This is our current set of boundaries that we follow today. And as you notice, all the boundaries kind of go into the center of Vineland, and they're all based on the amount of students and where they live. And throughout my presentations, I was asked, well, why can't we just draw a 2-mile circle around every school? This way, everybody who lives near that school can go to it. And it does sound correct at first thought. However, to do that, my next slide will prove it's not possible. This is a 2-mile boundary around all our elementary schools in the city of Vineland. As you can see, all of the lines intersect with at least 3 different schools, some even 4. So just for this reason alone, it's not possible to do the 2-mile boundary. Another reason, Durand School would have 272 students if we did this, would only be about half the capacity of the school. Winslow would have 1,000 students, and that's over 50% more than it can handle, and to finalize it, Sabatier would have 2,000 students, which is a large percentage of our elementary population. So we just can't do a 2-mile radius as much as we would all like that to happen. So again, this is our current boundary as we stand right now. Next year for 2018-2019, this will be our new boundaries. They are in white, and as you can see, it is a great difference than our current boundaries. And the main reason is Rossi School coming online as an elementary will be a very large elementary and will take a huge geographical area of the city of Vineland. So all boundaries had to be affected to keep the proper counts in our buildings. Now I will go through a succession of maps to give you a little bit clearer picture of the actual zone. But before that, the one bad news is 58% of our kindergarten through 5th grade students will be in a different building next year. And I knew that is a huge amount, and I did everything I could, and we did everything we could to try and minimize that. But again, when you're changing such a large geographical zone, you have to make a lot of movement. Next year, this will be Barcy Elementary School's boundary. The Polito Elementary School boundary. Durand Elementary School boundary. Menny's Elementary School. Petway Elementary School. Rossi Elementary School. Sabatier Elementary School. And finally, Winslow Elementary School. The one good piece of news, our average class size really did not go up or was not affected greatly. We currently stand at an average of 18 kindergarten students per classroom. In 2018-19, it will go to 20. First grade will be 17, or was 17, will go to 19. Second grade is 20, it will go to 21. Third grade is 20 and will go to 21. Fourth grade is 19, will go to 20. And fifth grade is 20, will go to 21. So as you can see, our average class size did not increase, which is pretty good for, again, repurposing 2 elementary schools. This is our current middle school boundary as we stand right now. Next year, this will be our new boundary for the 18-19 school year. As you can see, they didn't change greatly. The school name, of course, changed for Lincoln Avenue. Wallace and Memorial did change somewhat, and there's a small change between Lincoln and Memorial as well. Better news is our 7th and 8th grade students, only 18% of those had to move. This will be the new Lincoln Avenue Middle School boundary for next year. Memorial School. And Wallace Middle School. Switch gears a little bit for transportation. Whenever you redistrict, it affects transportation greatly as well. We will be operating 42 high school routes next year, 50 in middle school, and these are all regular education routes, and 85 elementary school routes. We've been on a 3-year cost-saving plan for transportation. This is our 3rd and final year. By creating new school zones, we were able to maintain the exact amount of routes that we have this year as next year, which is pretty good because repurposing the 2 schools that had a very large walker base. We will be adhering to our walking zones. For high school, it's 1 mile, middle school is 1 mile, and elementary school will be half mile, and we will be maintaining that for next school year. Also, we've been consolidating our bus stops for the last 2 years. This will be the final year with a final reduction of 30% of our current bus stops. This will, unfortunately, have some of our students walking a little farther to a bus stop. High school and middle could walk up to a half mile, and again, the majority will not, but they could walk up to. And our elementary school would be up to a 1/4 mile, and again, the majority will not, but they could walk up to that amount. This will give us a net savings of $229,000. Timeline for implementation. We will be sending out parent notification letters that will include the new school assignment for next year and the student's new bus stop, and that will go out in early May. We will have school open houses that will be held in June, early June, so that students that are changing school will be allowed to go there and see and get used to the building, and also meet their building principal. The only caveat to this is Lincoln Avenue Middle School. Right now, it's still iffy whether we will have an occupancy permit yet for that building. If we do not, we will have to push that back. If we do, we will also have that as an open house in early June. It does affect caregivers, so any parent that has caregivers, all the caregivers have been removed because they go along with school zones. So because we changed the zones greatly, we've removed all caregivers from student records, and all parents will have to reapply for their caregiver for next year. Because this is a huge daunting task for my department, we'll actually start taking them in June of this year. And as always, in August, early August, you will receive your school assignment and bus passes. And this concludes my presentation. And I know better than to wait for a certificate. I'm going to go sit down.
Just ask if they have any questions.
Board members, are there any questions on the HIB report? Comments? Seeing none?
Okay, is Jose Mateo here for the report from the high school? Okay, I guess not, so we will move on.
Questions or comments regarding the minutes from March 14th, 2018 combined board meeting, the March 14th, 2018 executive session, or March 28th, 2018 special board meeting? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio? Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes. Do we have a report by our solicitor?
None.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open up for public comment on agenda items only. Please be reminded you are limited to 5 minutes per person.
I
Ms. Haley?
received one yellow sheet for an agenda item. The rest are for the end of the meeting. Jeff Martine?
You can turn that around.
Yeah.
Good. Can you hear me?
No.
Hear me? No? I don't know.
Probably need to turn that up here.
How's this? Good?
Better.
Okay.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here one more time for the last time about Johnstone and Leukter, and I want to start off by clarifying a few things. I know this is not an easy decision for all of you to make. I know Dr. Gruccio was principal of Leukter. Mr. Ulrich's wife works at Leukter. Mr. Jennings had sons who went to Leukter. So I'm not unaware, and I think it's a great task that you guys are taking on. So I want to start with Leukter because Mr. Medio said something last week that really stuck with me. You know, we in Vineland reward successful programs, and that's true. We rewarded the football program with the turf. We're rewarding our dance program with dance floor, and we should be rewarding our BD program for the phenomenal work that they do. And I don't think by moving them, we're doing that, and that sends a bad message. So moving the BD program from Johnstone is not good for the student, not good for their parents, and not good for the BD teachers. If we're moving the program next year, this doesn't give the BD students a lot of time to adjust to their new surroundings, and it doesn't give the teachers a lot of time either. I've been subbing for about a year now, and when I was at a different school that wasn't Johnstone, I was a one-on-one sub for a student who ended up in Johnstone. He wasn't classified at the time, and he bolted right out the door, and I had to find him. I've never been to this school before, and this is something that's going to definitely take some getting used to. The BD program is kind of like Ellis Island. You get a little bit of everything. You have students with autism, you have students who suffer from trauma, you have students who have hearing or sight impairment. Traditionally, autistic students don't do well with change, and this kind of change can possibly hinder their educational growth, especially when they're dealing with an emotional disturbance or disorder. Some of the students coming from the school that we might, or where they'd be being sent to, had traumatic experiences there. When you get classified for BD, it's not because you're having stellar behavior. Things such as tantrums or some sort of violent incident could have happened at DePaulo where they'll be sent, and reintroducing them into that environment before they're ready is just, to me, I don't think it's just, especially when they have the emotional disorder that kind of hinders their emotional development. I think this move is kind of like taking your car into the mechanic and taking it out before the mechanic has even looked at it. It might run, but it's not going to take you very far without worsening the problem. The BD kids behave at Johnstone because they feel safe and loved, and pulling the carpet out from under them to give the school to a population that it isn't necessary for their emotional or academic growth, it just doesn't make much sense to me. The kids at Johnstone are mainstreamed in homeroom. They're able to go to a regular ed teacher and sit in because this is the end goal. They want to be mainstreamed back into regular ed population. Moving the program, you're also taking them away from the regular ed teachers who know how to handle these students, and they do it well. And the BD teachers cooperate with the regular ed teachers, and there's a very strong partnership there. And they all know the kids by names, and it's there would be a delay in that, I think, if the program was moved. When programs are successful in Vineland, like I said, we tend to reward them, and I understand that we're trying to compete with charter schools and with other districts, but this isn't the way to do that. We have, and this is going to tie back into Leukter, we have schools that do tremendous work, that get, I mean, from the last time I was here talking about Leukter, I've seen it in the paper, I've seen something Gia put up about Leukter, I've seen so much good publicity it's valuable. You know, people are reading about Vineland Public Schools because of schools like Leukter, because of schools like Johnstone. And Max Leukter also houses our autistic kindergarten program, and that's the perfect school for it. And the teachers are wonderful, and the staff, that makes the school. But the structure itself is perfect for that kind of environment. One of my last days at Leukter last year, a student stimulated from things rolling, and you know, he's always learning, always putting things together. She took him right in the hallway with a scooter and let him go nuts. You know, you can't do that at a bigger school like Rossi. And I think that Leukter, I think a lot of people think that Leukter should close because it's small, but that's its strength. And for such a small school, Leukter has one of the largest impacts. I mean, there are no two other schools that I would come from all the way from Washington, D.C., sit in an hour and a half of traffic in Philly to be here to talk about. Johnstone and Leukter, they're both responsible for the academic, emotional, and social growth of so many of our students. And it's phenomenal. Leukter's programming, Johnstone's programming, their staff, their principal, that's the bar. That's the bar. So in closing, I want to leave you with the goal of Vineland Public School. It's to elevate all of our students. Despite behavioral disorder, despite disability, everything. We're supposed to lift the lowly, give voice to the voiceless, and promote our students into a state of excellence. And I mean, that's what Vineland Public Schools has done for me. So I just want that opportunity to extend to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Anyone else have any comments on the public agenda? Seeing none. Motions and resolutions, Dr. Gruccia.
I'd like to recommend discussion. Excuse me. I'd like to recommend discussion and approval of personnel items, retirements, resignations, terminations, leaves of absence, employment transfers, student substitutes, extracurricular activities, extracurricular summer, and volunteers.
Questions or comments? Seeing none. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I'd like to recommend discussion and approval of trips and district travel.
Questions or comments? Seeing none. Motion.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval to authorize the board secretary to enter into an affiliation agreement with Wilmington University for the 2017-18 school year for the placement of students for field internship, student teaching, practicum, and observations.
Questions or comments? Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Bordley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval of the 2018-19 school calendar for pupil attendance as provided and on file with the board secretary.
Questions or comments? Motion.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Bordley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the Vineland High School Art Educational Travel Abroad from April 18th through April 30th, 2019. All costs are the responsibility of the participants. Chaperones and students shall be excused from school.
Questions, comments?
Have a good, safe trip.
Thank you. Any others? Motion.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
I'm sorry, yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Bordley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the second reading of the bylaws, policies, and regulations for adoption. Policy 5330.04, administering an opioid antidote, and Policy 7510, the use of school facilities.
Questions or comments? Motion.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Bordley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion only regarding the bylaws, policies, and regulations of Bylaw 169.01, Board Member Use of Social Networks, and Policy 5430, Class Rank.
Questions, comments? Mr. Media?
Yes, 5430, class rank. I would imagine you'll bring that up next month for the vote.
Correct.
Yes.
And I imagine the vote will be 8-1 because I think it's ridiculous to eliminate valedictorian, salutatorian, and to not recognize the success of our students.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none?
I would like to recommend discussion and approval of the New Jersey Department of Ed projects for schematic and final approval with no state funding requested. The Catone Stadium improvements, the Winslow School resurfacing, the Pauline Petway School secure entrance, and the Wallace Middle School secure entrance.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Bordley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval of the following New Jersey Department of Education project for schematic and final approval with no state funding requested. The closing of Max Lichter School.
Questions, comments? Mr. Ulrich?
Just a couple of questions and then a comment. I am going to vote for the closing of Max Lichter School. However, you know, I just think that the points that Jeff brought up, Martine, are absolutely on point. We are closing a school that excels for economic reasons because of a middle school that was opened up and I guess all good things come to an end. But the question that I have is going to deal with the logistics of doing this. And my concern is, one is, I heard from, Joe Calavini referenced it a little bit. We don't know when we're going to take control of Lincoln Middle School. With that being said, if we don't have that firm date, we can't proceed with the plan because you got to have one building out to get another building in. And if we're going to try to move Johnstone School out, AMSA in, Rossi School to Lincoln, and then Max Loiter to Rossi, I just logistically, I don't know how with the personnel that we have is going to accomplish that task. It is a lot of logistics involved. I think we're expecting a lot from our teachers to, if they don't get word until mid-July that their school's ready to be moved. I mean, the instructions that are coming out is that here's your boxes, get the tapes from the janitors, and pack up your stuff. It's disheartening, and I don't know if we considered overtime, if we're going to run multiple shifts. I don't know if we've considered hiring a professional moving company to assist in the logistics of this. And I'm concerned that change is inevitable. We're going to have change in the district, change in life. But what I'm really concerned about is that this change, coupled with 58% of our students, elementary students, changing schools, and then having a large amount of our district professionals having to move. I mean, that's life. You're guaranteed a job, not a place, not a space to work. But how is that going to be done? And that's my question to Dr. Gruccio.
We have a meeting set up for next week with the maintenance department, with the warehouse, and with central administration to put that plan in place. Also, the new school that'll be opening comes completely furnished with everything, so nothing would have to be moved other than our textbooks and anything personal that a teacher may have. But we have a meeting set up to put that plan in place. And Mr. Fernaccio, if you want to add anything, please do. But I believe that we are looking at acquiring our middle school sometime in May, but certainly by June from what we have been told to this point. But maybe Mr. Fernaccio can add some more information to that.
Yes, Dr. Gruccio. The official date for the transfer of that middle school to is July 1st. They are on target, and the plan is to move in or hand over the building. We are talking now with the SDA, late April, May, that will be taking over the building. Furniture might not be delivered yet, but officially everything will be completed by July 1.
Follow-up question, directed to you, Doctor, but it's for Paul, really, or Wayne, or whoever. What type of retrofitting needs to be done at Rossi School to accept elementary students, and how is, like, Johnstone set up elementary now? You're going to be mixing high school students with middle school students. So what, like, I've never got that question, like, what are we doing as far as the building goes?
There are a lot of moving parts, Mr. Ulrich. I know there's conversations. We have changed usages over in the past to Polito, middle to elementary. So there is lowering of furniture. Furniture usually is modular in the sense most of the items that we have can be lowered for lower grade level. Middle school, some kids require furniture raised. We have that furniture, so the height adjustments really aren't that much of an issue. Rossi will need some fixtures lowered in some spaces. I know AMSA, the AMSA program, a lot of that furniture that is over at Veterans Memorial School that needs to transport over, they have upgraded and purchased modular systems that move easily. So I can't pinpoint all of the working parts, We have had preliminary conversations with Dr. Gruccio, Nate Fry, and we've talked about some of these items. And so now, we're going to have this upcoming meeting to put the plan in motion. We are looking at maybe some overtime, some additional shift moves. There's definitely going to be a dance to get things moved over, but we are anticipating that. DePolito, when we converted DePolito, it wasn't as bad as needed. Fixtures in bathrooms, toilet fixtures, we're pretty aggressive with the change. We know that we're going to have to staff it. I mean, we have a set staff. We're going to have to appropriate for some additional hours, but we anticipate that we can do it all.
Do we anticipate that our skilled laborers are going to do the plumbing, or are you going to have to get a subcontractor?
We would do that in-house. Unless there's some specific need with DePolito, with BD, or something of that nature where they're, with a classroom, I know they're talking about a room, a padded room, or some type of room with lower lighting levels. A lot of that we can do in-house. So, plumbing and all, we're planning to do in-house. There might be some logistical items that we would look to sub out with our contractors, but overall, we are anticipating our in-house facility staff to take care of that.
And I guess my last question would be, take into account everything you just said, and then factor in the fact that you have normal summer maintenance that goes on, flooring, painting. How is all that going to be accomplished? You guys don't have unlimited resources and staff.
Mr. Ulrich, you're absolutely right. It's going to be a challenge. I mean, that's where we are going to have to look at some additional hours, because we have a set amount of staff, and so with those moves, even with the warehouse, there's 3 men that work at the warehouse. We do have a sub list that we are planning to pull. These are usually the substitute workers that we utilize, and we don't bring them in the summer. There's about 12 additional men there. And so we are planning to, we'll definitely accrue some additional hours. But again, summer cleaning, we've got that down to a science. We've got that locked in. So obviously we're going to have a little bit of time with the buildings that we're moving. We're going to focus our workforces out in the other buildings where there are no changes, and then as the summer moves forward and we finish up buildings, that will open up the additional labor to help get those buildings done. The move it's going to take time to move, and we'll clean around certain things, get things out, and then we'll start the cleaning in those buildings.
And my last comment would be to Dr. Gruccio. For my Max Loiter family, can we just close Rossi School?
You know how much I love Max Loiter School. I do have to publicly just say one thing. Just moving here to Landis was a tremendous move, because we moved everybody out of the Reber building. We're still moving transportation and registration over here. And Mr. Salerno and his team of people at the warehouse, the maintenance department, and Mr. Fernaccio, Mr. Weaver, everybody has really stepped up to the plate, and this was a massive move, and the building was closed for a year, so there's a tremendous amount of work that had to be done and is still being done, but everybody has been gracious and tried to help us in every way they can, and it is my hope that the same thing will happen as we move forward with these moves.
Thank you for the answers, and I promise to hold you to the flame on this one.
All right. You hear that, Mr. Fernaccio?
I think that runs downhill.
I believe so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. I forget where I was.
3.2.
3.2.
Okay,
Any other
thank you.
questions or comments regarding 3.2? Seeing none. Motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
With a heavy heart, yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
You know, I'm going to change my vote. Symbolically, I'm going to vote no.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
I'd like to recommend discussion and approval of a resolution declaring Max Lichter School as no longer needed for school purposes and authorizing and directing the superintendent to apply for permission to lease Max Lichter School.
Questions, comments? Mr. Medio?
Why wouldn't we get the new school handed over to us by June 1st or July 1st? What would be the reason for that?
We will, am I correct, Mr. Fernaccio?
Mr. Medio, I apologize. What was the question?
Well, let me put it this way. The fly in the ointment is if we don't get that new school handed over to us. If that doesn't get handed over to us, I don't see how we're opposed to Max Lichter.
Officially, the SDA handover was July 1. Contractor, they're finishing up all the items. They've removed the trailers. The job trailers are gone. They're working inside the principal's office right now. They are going to be done. They're going to be done. We're actually, I know there was a question about having an open house this month, and they just didn't want to put that exact timeline on. They're working towards the certificate of occupancy. I know there's, nothing is finite. The tentative conversations, Wayne was just on the phone with the job superintendent, and they were looking at probably May in the handover. Bach wants to be out of there as well. And again, they're finishing up the final details of the building. Right now, though, legally, the tentative date for handover is July 1.
But it could be sooner. But we don't want to claim that.
It's 90% that it's going to be handed over sooner, about 90%. But even July 1 included the furniture. So the building on the handover will have the furniture involved, but they had already anticipated the logistics of some of the staff possibly moving in a little bit earlier, but the conversations that we're having, they're looking at May, June.
And does that school have to be turnkey at that point? Every project done?
Turnkey. That would be CO complete. Certificate of occupancy.
And no other site work going on or anything like that?
No, to my knowledge, done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? Motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
No.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
I'd like to recommend discussion and approval of budgetary transfers for the general, school-based, and ECPA budgets for February 2018.
Comments? Questions? Seeing none? Motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval of the board secretary and treasurer reports for February 2018.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio? Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the placement of special education students.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I'd like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the submission of the following grant applications. The Model Classroom Grant for DePalato School and Wallace Middle School.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Discussion and approval on the elementary teen application for New Jersey Child Assault Prevention, Teen Child Assault Prevention, and Special Needs Child Assault Prevention.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio? I'm sorry. Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I recommend discussion and approval regarding the cancellation of the list of checks that are provided and on file with the board secretary.
Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the contracts for summer food service, Sodexo Management, and reimbursement agreement with the State of New Jersey for the Vineland Board of Ed summer program.
Questions or comments?
Just one question. In the past, I know that the PAL program, as the summer program, was serviced by that program. Is that still in place, do you know?
By Sodexo or by this other?
By Sodexo.
Do you know if they're doing that again this year?
Well, it was the district, but, you know, it was serviced because of those kids.
I would say the ones, I have to see what locations
Okay.
they're at, but I know it's at Winslow and one other school, and whatever kid, Wallace, I'm sorry, Wallace.
Wallace.
Yeah, it's at Wallace. Whatever kids are here that we usually serve, we're serving the same ones. I'd have to go look at the agreement to see if it lists
Okay.
them. Do you want me to look at it right now?
No, Helen,
Okay.
you can just
Okay, just let you know after.
jot it back to me when
Okay.
you can.
I was talking to Pravesh at the Future Chef competition, and he said they did get funding to provide breakfast and lunch for the PAL program.
Okay, very good.
The one thing that does happen, though, is we don't make money on this, I can
I
tell you
know.
that, but it's something that we have to do while they're here.
Any further questions, comments? Motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I recommend discussion and approval of a change order from Levi Construction for credit for unused contingency allowance.
Questions, comments? This is for the elevator, correct?
Yes. We didn't use the whole contract amount, so this is a credit coming back to us.
Thank you. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Discussion and approval awarding, the following contract for our alternative high school for the term July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019, with an option to renew 2 one-year terms or 1 2-year term for a maximum of 3 years. The vendor is Camelot Education.
Questions or comments?
I have a comment. Thank you. You guys are doing a great job, Camelot.
Any other questions, comments? Motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Discussion and approval regarding the following joint transportation agreements between the Vineland Board of Ed and Pleasantville Public Schools.
Questions or comments? Roll call? Oh, I'm sorry. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Discussion and approval regarding the joint transportation agreement between the Vineland Board of Ed and the Trenton Public Schools. This would be from September 7th, 2016 to June 30th, 2017.
Questions or comments?
Are those dates correct?
Yes. I talked to Mr. Calavini about that, and what happened was, they didn't agree, it's from that year, but they did not agree to an amount, so they had to negotiate it, and we just came to a conclusion, and it's $8,050. So it has to be approved now.
Any other questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I'd like to recommend discussion and approval of a resolution authorizing interlocal agreements with several Cumberland County school districts for joint bus transportation through the Cumberland County Regional Cooperative.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I'd like to recommend discussion and approval regarding the joint transportation agreement between Pine Hill School District and the Vineland Board of Education.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I recommend discussion and approval regarding bus advertisement renewal for Frank Wells Paving for 1 year, 10 ads, in the amount of $975.
Questions, comments?
I have a question. These advertisements have been doing well for the businesses as well as us, correct?
Correct.
We've had good feedback on these? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Frank Wells Paving.
Any further questions or comments? Motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I recommend discussion and approval regarding Cumberland County Regional Cooperative Transportation Initiatives. There are 4 awards listed below.
Questions or comments? Motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley?
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
That's it.
Review of bills incurred during February 2018. Questions or comments? Motion to accept.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes. Do we have any committee reports this evening?
Yes, I do, policy and personnel. The Policy and Personnel Committee met tonight. Present were board members, myself, Inez Acosta, Chris Jennings sat in. Thank you, Chris. Meg had some personal items she was attending to, so we let her off the hook. She didn't have to come. We had Dr. Guccio, Mr. Frangipani, Dr. Rossi, Mrs. Haley. We discussed some personnel issues as far as an update on those issues that will be briefed to the board in executive session, or that were already briefed to the board on executive session. We also discussed the proposed policy of armed security in our schools. The recommendation of the committee was that the policy be forwarded to our legal counsel for review, and then submission to the full board for consideration in May. And that's really it. That's all we really had on the agenda tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ulrich. Any other committee reports? Seeing none. At this time, we have an opportunity for the public to address the board. Again, please be reminded you're limited to 5 minutes for each person. Mrs. Haley?
We do have yellow sheets. It's not required for this time, so the people can just come up.
Good evening. You know me. My name is Jennifer Pilla. I'm speaking to you tonight to request that you reconsider allowing the public to nominate members of the community for the naming of the Lincoln Avenue Middle School. I believe the reason given for the no vote was that it would hurt people's feelings if their nominee was not chosen. The process for nominating someone allows the family of the nominee a great opportunity to make that candidate known, to make the board and the community aware of an outstanding citizen and their accomplishments. If that candidate does not get chosen, it still gives comfort to the family to share their loved one's story. In life, you win some and you lose some. You lose most, in fact. We shouldn't stop honoring great people in the community because we're afraid to hurt feelings. What kind of an example is that to teach our kids? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bill.
Good evening and hello. My name is Lois Genovese, and I'm a former Vineland High School social studies teacher. I'm here to speak on the naming of the new school in support of Sergeant Dominic Pillow. Now, I'm not going to go into any of the issues that we've had discussed before. I know Jennifer and other members of the community have spoken on his accomplishments and the reasons that it's appropriate. I'm going to give a different perspective on this. And I have two things, the perspective, and then the second thing is the quantity of evidence, the groundswell support for this, that I, inadvertently, no longer a resident of Vineland, have come into contact with. Now, the new perspective is an educational one. As a teacher of history, in the late 90s, around that time, I was in the 1112 building, saw the wrapped up flag from Dominic Pilla's casket, and memorabilia that the family had donated to the school so that he would be remembered as a graduate of Vineland High School. I asked about it. I was told he was killed in action. He graduated from Vineland High. But upon more research, I discovered that he was involved in the Battle of Mogadishu in Somalia and was the first to be killed of 19. I read the book, I saw the movie Black Hawk Down, and I immediately incorporated it into my curriculum in my history classes. Let me tell you, the levels of learning from this bit of living history, contemporary history, is unbelievable. I never presented Dominic Pilla, young Vineland 21-year-old, to my students until late. It was about the geography, it was about the time, it was about President Clinton, why we were there, Rangers, Delta Force, and then who he was. And then I showed the film. The students were engaged, they were inspired, they were in awe. And every year after that, I incorporated that into my curriculum. Now, I ask you, this is so profound on so many levels. I ask all of you this: how many students, past and present, could tell you anything about their school's namesake, about DePaulo, Rossi, Barcy, Winslow, Cunningham? How many could? And if they can't, which my guess is they couldn't, why not? Is there not enough relevant history, Vineland history, for them to be engaged in this? I was simply amazed when about a month ago, and this is the second thing I want to address, how I got kind of like pulled into this. Facebook, the controversy on Facebook. And years ago, I was on the board of the Vineland Historical Society, and I was the editor of the Vineland Historical magazine. I succeeded after Dan Barcy. And I did a double issue that year because it was Vineland's 150th birthday celebration. And I incorporated a new feature called Military Hometown Heroes. And Dominic Pilla was the first one that I brought into that because I am so absolutely, incredibly, as an historian, amazed at this story. And others. And the following year I did it again. I included my uncle Harry Spear, who died in the Berlin airlift. So yes, there are many from Vineland who can be noted, and not just in military. As a member of the board of directors of the Historical Society, I was completely blown away with the amazing history in and from this town that nobody knows about. And we're not talking on a local level, we're not talking on a national level, we are talking Miles Lerman on an international level. Let's do something about this. And the reason I'm in such support of Dominic Pilla is because of the educational piece that no one has spoken of. So, I posted on Facebook the background information I had from the magazine that I edited. And I put 5 or 6 pictures up there. I put up the 2 pages from the magazine, 2010, 2011. I put up an image of the actor who played him. I put up the monument at Landis Park in honoring him, and a few others. Now, if we get like 5, 10, 15 shares on Facebook for a posting, that's pretty meaningful. And to date, there have been 437 shares, not likes, shares of this post. Exponentially, it's more. So the second thing I want to address is the fact that there is a ground.
Shorten this up, we're over the 5 minutes. So
I drove an hour to get here. Can I have one more minute? Okay.
We have rules.
No, or is that a no?
If you can just wrap up, I'm not going to cut you off, but you can wrap up.
I'll say, the last thing I say is that there's a groundswell. So I'm hoping that this beautiful building, this school building, I can see it with Dominic Pilla's name on it, home of the Rangers, and the Rangers slogan, "Lead the way." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Genovese.
Hi, I'm Cara Donato. I'm also a Vineland resident. I noticed the public outcry after the last board meeting in regards to the school naming. Excuse me, and I too was surprised by the vote. And it had occurred to me that it could be a financial issue that made some of you vote no. And perhaps signs and letterheads had already been purchased, as well as other things of that nature. And as a state employee, I am well aware of budget constraints. I believe that if you choose to name the school for Sergeant Dominic Pilla, the community would generously donate any funds needed. And personally, I've never seen any Vinelanders rally behind one of their own like I did after the March meeting. The people in Vineland want the school to be named properly, and I believe the consensus wants it to be named for Sergeant Pilla. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donato.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Molnar, and I'm here tonight to respectfully ask you all to reconsider naming the new middle school for the street on which it is located, and instead keep with the tradition rooted deeply in Vineland's history. I've been following social media as well, and I've read that fairness was cited as a reason not to choose one specific soldier over another. However, soldiers consider themselves brothers. They're family. They wouldn't see this as one being more worthy than the other. To honor one would be to honor them all. Sergeant Dominic Pilla was a standout Army Ranger. The training required to attain Ranger status is rigorous, to say the least. Truly, only the best can hack this. Dominic thrived in the military. He was a leader in his peer group who saved the lives of others on the day that he died. The battle in which he lost his life was portrayed in the movie Black Hawk Down. Naming the school for Sergeant Pilla would bring positive publicity to this town, a community supporting one of its own who made the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moeller.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm representing my brother, that he was killed in Vietnam in 1967, and I feel that...
Excuse me, can you just state your name, please, for us?
Josephine Nguyen.
Thank you.
Eleanor Emperor Brown. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. And we feel that he dedicated his life to the country, and he was under 18, but he died at 18 years old. He was killed in Vietnam, and he was a radio man, and he was machine gunned down, they said. And I just feel that, you know, he did his duty, and why, you know.
There was a lot of boys in Vineland that got killed. It shouldn't be named one person.
Yeah.
It should be in memory of all of them. If they want to put a plaque in front of the school with their names on it.
And he was the first one in Vineland that was killed.
He was the first Marine that was killed.
And so we feel, you know, that should be fair. That, you know, as far as naming one person, I mean,
They should all be honored.
I do really tell you, I know Pilla. He came to my house all the time. He played with my son, and they played Army all together. I mean, they just thrived on it. And I knew him. I mean, he felt like my own son. But when my brother died, he really died first. And then when he died, I mean, why would it be different one over the other? And that's how we feel. So, you know. That's the end.
They want to
Thank you,
name it Lincoln Avenue Memorial School and put a plaque of all the boys' names in the front of the school, I think would be the best.
Best way. Yeah. That's how we feel. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Anyone else like to address the board? Thank you for your comments. We have anything for old business? Anything for new business? New business?
Did you say, oh.
Yes.
I have a new business. Under the board bylaws, and I would like to recommend an AHOG committee for public relations and communications. I would like to address some of the things that are put out to the public about the board's decisions and just better communication in general on, you know, how to communicate with parents, social media. So I would like to put together an AHOG committee.
Thank you. We can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Any other comments on that?
Meg had talked about this last meeting, and I think it's a great idea. I mean, ad hoc committees were, their function is to be a short-term committee that the board can put into place. It would be great to have a person that has Meg's qualities, background, to talk about real things, communication issues in the district, how board decisions possibly are done, what the responsibilities of the board are, and to push out this information. So I think it's a really great idea, Meg, and if, depending upon when the meetings are, because I am maxed out with policy and personnel and finance, I would be proud to be on the committee, but we'd have to see how many members wish to be on it and what the times would be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Meddy.
I have no problem with the ad hoc committee on communication. Of course, Ms. Spinelli would be a member, in my opinion. The second person on this board who has more experience than the rest of us combined is Mr. Soprano. So I would certainly expect him to be a member of this committee to give it credibility in the eyes of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Medio.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Board member remarks. Mr. Fiocchi?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Holmes?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Ulrich?
I do, just a couple of comments. I'm never going to pass up my 5 minutes, usually, if I'm not too mad. Jeff Martine, I just want to tell you that you represent what is great about Vineland High School and becoming active in issues and the community, and your mom and dad should be proud people, because I'm proud of you, and I know that your heart and soul actually went into those remarks, and that you're saddened by the closure of Johnstone and Max Loiter School. So hats off to you, and you'll always be a fixture here, and you only have great things ahead of you in your life. So again, thank you for coming to the board. Max Loiter School, I mean, I think I've said a lot over the years. That school is great. Carmi here, the principal of that school, she's developed an atmosphere where the staff follows her. They support her. The parents, myself and Mr. Jennings, had the honor to be part of their annual fundraiser. It's a purse bingo. It's a sold-out event. I've been there many times, volunteered over the years, and I got to tell you, I was sad just being there because, I'm already thinking, all right, how do you take that enthusiasm now and put that into a big situation? My experience when my wife taught at the Palo Alto, and I was over there a lot as a board member, as a police officer, was that it was kind of two buildings. That you had kind of like the lower grade levels in one half and the older kids in another half, and it's a lot of people and moving parts and kids. So I want to wish you the best of luck. You're going to need it. You're going to need that enthusiasm, and most of all, you're going to have to integrate new staff members that are be coming to you and looking for that leadership, that guidance. It's about the boots on the ground, but you can't get the boots on the ground to work if they don't respect you and lead through example. And from what I've seen through my years of interaction with you, you've done that over at Max Lichter School, and I want to congratulate you and wish you the best of luck on your new task with having the largest elementary school in Vineland in September of this year coming up. As far as the school, name of the school, you know, I really wasn't going to make any comments, but I really feel that it was portrayed by some members of the public, and people that know me would know different. But, you know, and I'm not, the reason I voted no doesn't have anything to do with feelings. You know, I'm really more, I look at things in a pragmatic sense, and I'm trying to look at, you know, how can we get to point A to point B to get to C? So that characterization about feelings, hurting people's feelings, did not come from me. That's not the reasons I voted no. The reasons I voted no were that this matter was settled by a prior board in 2016. The current board was inclined to leave the naming of the school in the name that it was addressed as Lincoln Middle School. If the prior board okayed that to do. Some of the members that complained were from that prior board, and I say shame on them. If you wanted to get that school named at that time, you should have did a push. You should have been out there making those recommendations and going forward. But instead, we get to the point we are now. Dominic Pillar, he is an American hero. I had the good fortune of being able to be in a small gathering, about 250 other law enforcement officers, and hear from Mike Durant, the pilot of the actual chopper that went down. He was with the 160 Special Operations Aviation Regiment. He was captured, tortured, severely injured. It was a story that, you know, breaks my heart. He wrote a book, In the Company of Heroes. Well, Dominic Pilla is an American hero. It was portrayed that this was a vote against the military. I mean, that is simply ludicrous. I support the military. I will do what I can to continue that support. I've served with members of my law enforcement career that have served active combat duty, that have seen the horrors of war, and I respect the military. I respect the law enforcement world. Never should I be characterized as not supporting military or law enforcement. That is the thread of who I am, and it will continue to be that thread. So I just wanted to clear the record that you'll never hear me dispute that Dominic Pilla is not an American hero, along with any other Vinelander that died in service of our country. They protect our freedoms, our liberty. We have a lot going on in our country today, so I felt that it was important for me personally, because a lot of people said, well, you have to explain why you voted no. And I've been on this board for 9 years, and I don't really see a lot of people explaining too much of anything on yes votes or no votes. And, you know, most of the time I do. I'm a very principled individual. So I just wanted to clear the air on that. And if that matter is a matter the board wants to take up, then they take it up again. But, my wavering feelings on how I feel about military and law enforcement will never change, regardless of what happens to the name of the school. Thank you and good night, and thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Mr. Ulrich. Ms. Spinelli?
In regards to the naming of the school, I think that if it does come upon us that we're going to open it up, I don't think the 9 members on this board should solely have all the vote. We live in a town with 60,000 people, and I would like to see the community more involved in that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spinelli. Mr. Media?
I don't remember the last time I spoke at this board meeting. I guess I'll speak tonight. If you want the community more involved, the Daily Journal would certainly be more than happy to run a poll if that would help you out. As far as naming of the school, while it's a fact that the previous board named it Lincoln Avenue School, in our history in Vineland, there was a school named the Orchard Road School. That name was changed to the Dave Larson School. The Magnolia Road School, I believe, was the original name. That name was changed to the Winslow School after the Winslow Annex that was there. So there is plenty of precedent to change the name and honor people who deserve to be honored. Now, I know some people have this idea that only certain groups of people should be allowed to have schools named after them, and I'm sure that the vast majority of the people in this town don't believe that. You deserve to have a school named after you for your contribution above and beyond the call of duty to something. Whether it's your volunteerism in the community, it's your work as a community activist, if you pay the supreme price in the name of your country. So I'm in favor of naming the school after someone, and I'll continue to try and help a few of my fellow board members to see my way on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Medio. Mr. Sobrano?
I appreciate being home and being able to hear what's going on in the room tonight, especially in regards to Dominic Pilla and Lewin Ferrer, who was a childhood friend, and some others. Certainly an issue that we're going to have to continue discussing before we name or not name a building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sobrano. Mr. Jennings?
As far as naming of the school, I'd love to put everyone's name on the school, and there were some good ideas, and we do have a memorial school, which is called Veterans Memorial School, which we can take individuals' names and honor them maybe once a year, once every 2 years, and maybe have everybody's name on a plaque in the school. And I think that would go a lot farther than naming one school after one person, as we have done in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Ms. Acosta?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate all the students who were honored tonight for their wonderful work. It was very nice to see the girls' swim team and hear about their accomplishments as well, not only their accomplishments with regard to their sport, but also their academic accomplishment. I would also like to just address the issue of naming of the school. You know, while I know that it's obviously there are so many worthy individuals that deserve the honor of being recognized for what they've done. I have to say that I do agree with Jennifer Pilla in the sense that personally, I find it comforting to be able to speak of someone that I love, that I feel made a contribution. And anytime I get a chance to be able to, for example, bring up my mother, who was my hero, it brings me joy, regardless of the fact that whether people care or not. So I understand, and I get that. So, you know, and I will continue talking about my mom to anybody that'll listen. So, you know, I understand. I hope that this is not about, you know, seeing one individual or winners and losers. I mean, this is about honoring the great people of our town. So, again, I'm just, I will, obviously, we are a board and we have to reach a consensus together. But I wanted to just put on the record how I felt.
Thank you, Ms. Acosta. Dr. Ruccio?
I'd like to speak about something that took place yesterday. Our AMSA students were here yesterday and in Spira, and we were very honored to have in Spira. They actually began by watching our students who developed different apps. One of them was in to support the healthcare industry, and they were so impressed at the hospital that they came yesterday and they provided a few things for our AMSA students. First, they're purchasing a coding program for our students to utilize, which is quite expensive, and the students are very excited about it. Second, they're providing mentoring for those students. And third, as you can see in the front of the stage, they gave us $10,000 to support the AMSA program. So we were very, very pleased and happy to share such a partnership, because we can do all we want in our district, but if we don't work together with our city and our hospital and different people in our community, we're really not doing justice to our students. So when you're able to do something like that and work in conjunction and support one another, it really makes you feel good. And our students were very proud, as we're proud of them. So it was a wonderful day. Also, we had Gary Galloway, who's the president of the board, was so impressed yesterday that he came in this morning and gave me a $500 check to go towards AMSA as well. So we have students in our district that are doing wonderful things, not just in the AMSA program, but all throughout the district, as you saw this evening as well. So I'm really proud of what we do. Sometimes it's hard to overshadow the perception that people have, but I would put our district up against anyone. I think we have good administrators, good teachers, and I think anyone who wants a good education can get it in Vineland Public Schools. So I'm very proud to be a part of it. I'm very proud of the people that work here and the students that go here. So I just wanted to thank the hospital, Gary, and just give a shout out to the great work that our people do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gruccio. In closing, I would like to congratulate the swim team and their accomplishments. Also, we had a student that's from Vineland that entered into a contest for a sobriety campaign. Luke Vistano created a tuxedo pocket card, as well as it's now going to be a billboard for staying sober. He coined the phrase, "Remember the night when it's over," regarding prom. He has an older brother going to prom this year, so he created this card in honor of his brother and to make sure his brother and his classmates stay safe. So congratulations to Luke for winning that. Also, congratulations to Alec Ramondi and Aiden Farrer on their tremendous accomplishments, and all their mentors and teachers and parents that put time and effort into that. Thank you all, and have a great night. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.